Welcome to our reserves and our baby blues clues from all around. Thank you for joining. Welcome everyone. As you join, please mute your microphone. Thank you for joining the special reserve town hall where we're prioritizing our reserves and our baby blues at this time. Thank you. And as I have my tea. I don't know why it took me forever to wake up this morning. I don't know, but I went to bed at like 1 in the morning. So
I slept till 6.
I was awoken by a cat crashing Christmas decorations, so it was an abrupt wake up at 5:30.
Oh my gosh. I'm dog sitting, so the dog insisted on also sleeping in my bed. So I had 3 weighted blankets last night, and it was a struggle for real.
Someone never had 5 cats and a dog, and it shows.
It was just like
I literally can't move at a certain point in the evening because they've all like wedged themselves into different like areas of my body. So I just have to like sleep like this.
right. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. We'll be starting in 1 minute, everyone. Thank you for joining. Make sure you are muted. At the very least that you're muted. Thank you.
Got the fish tank going in the background. Oh, I should have known.
Hey, it's my fish tank.
The therapeutic gurgle.
You gurgle?
It's my fish crying out for help because the plant is sucking all the water away.
All right, it's 10:05. I'm giving a heads up to Lindy. She'll need to be introducing herself with 30 seconds of speaking time. You're welcome. Welcome everyone to the town hall. This is 12:03:21. This is our special reserve. Every time I say that, I think alcohol, but I don't know why. But yes, our special reserve town hall that we added as an additional component to our other 9 town halls that we're doing for this TA2 that we are trying to gain clarification and understanding. So this specific town hall is going to be more of a comfortable, less rigid atmosphere because it is for our baby blues and our reserves. So we are going to start off with our housekeeping a little bit different with a welcome. So welcome everyone who is here, including our negotiating team member, our TW International reps, as well as some of our TAP steering reps is also on this call. And I'm going to hand introductions off. I'm going to have each negotiating team member introduce themselves, and then after the negotiating team member do a short introduction of themselves, I'm also going to have our TAP steering chair introduce themselves and also kind of give a short description on what TAP is and our mission and our purpose. I'm going to hand it off. I'm going to start to the West Coast first. So that's going to be Brendan. Brendan is going to start, and then we're going to go around. Thank you.
Thanks, Taisha, and thanks everybody for joining the call. Thanks for the introduction, Taisha. My name is Brendan Moriarty. I'm the LEX-based representative on the negotiating team, and we feel strongly that some of our biggest wins are in the reserve article for our reserves. We're looking forward to highlighting some of those on this call. So thanks for joining.
Who's next? New York, then Boston.
Hey everyone, my name is Stacey Basford, and give you a little introduction because you guys probably weren't here when we started all of this thing. I've been with JetBlue for 21 years, based in New York for all of it. I was the ultimate baby blue. There was just a little tiny puffball on a chain when I started as the marker of the baby in the class, and I still had braces. So I have really seen it all here, and we are just so grateful for what you guys do right now. So thanks for joining us.
All right, I'll jump in. I'm Sonya Payne. I'm the Boston representative on the negotiating team. I also do, even though I've been here for 17 years, I do sit reserve still as part of the domestic mint program. So I do really know what's going on in this article and live it at least 1 week out of the month. Just wanted to say, even though reserve is going to be a really short period of time of your career here, it's going to be very impactful. So we really thank you for joining us today so you can really get an understanding for those of you that are brand new in Baby Blue, or those who have been sitting reserve for maybe a year or two or so or longer, hopefully not. Happy that you're here so we can just kind of unpack these articles that are directly impact you. Thanks for joining us.
All right, Orlando, then Fort Lauderdale, then Miss Howard.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Ernesto Gomez here, Orlando-based negotiating team member. Just got back from the airport. I was there bright and early today, doing airport visibility, talking to some of my fellow in-flight crew. I'm happy I made it home just in time to sit in on this. This is actually a really great article. It's one that I benefit from as well, going back and reading through, or even better, kind of listening in on the call, because essentially we're all, even line holders, can be on reserve at any given moment too. So this is good stuff for us to know as well. Across the board, I remember my days of reserve very clearly, and I don't forget. So I'm happy to be a part of the call too. Thank you.
And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Lazito Clamar, and I'm the Fort Lauderdale part of the NT. And my history with JetBlue is I just celebrated my 20th anniversary, so yay to that. But I have been a flight attendant for 37 years and started over 3 times, not because I wanted to, because of situations that happened in the world. And so I do understand being on reserve, because it's happened to me 3 times as I started over. And we really tried with this contract and now having a union to make your reserve a little bit easier. It was my experience at my other airlines that we were already unionized. So I had rules when I was on reserve. And even though it is tough, and I understand that, with rules, it makes it a lot easier. So we hope that this will be informative for you. And once again, we thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, I'm Lindy Howard, and Taisha, thank you for not alerting me sooner that I would be on video, but that's cool. I just want to say hi, I'm the TAP chair. TAP has basically been tasked to facilitate the education portion of our contract. And so we've worked really hard to make sure that we're kind of making it accessible to all. Via slideshows, town halls, airport visibility. And we just really want to take the time to thank you for showing up to this town hall today, because I think the health and wellness and quality of life of reserves directly affects reserves, but it also affects line holders as well. If we can keep you guys happy and doing the job that you signed up for and make it as high quality as possible, you will stick around longer, which in turn affects us all in a very positive manner. So again, thank you for showing up today. We appreciate that. And I will hand it off to Taisha.
All right, and that was the beautiful looking Lindy that just spoke. I am also on the TAP steering. I have been with JetBlue. I just celebrated the completion of my 6th year, so I'm now in my 7th year. I am also a JFK OBL. So I also sit as a reserve member like Sonya every month, because I will maybe in 12 years be in the top 12% to not sit reserve at some point as an OBL person. So that is a little introduction about me. And I'm also a commuter. So for those who are probably going to sit reserve a little longer and who also could possibly commute, I am also an Orlando commuter, but based out of JFK. So we're going to get started. We are actually going to start with our wins list, then go to article unpacking so we can talk about other things that may not be on our wins list, but also is super important for you to know as it relates to the negotiating process. And that includes our wrap stuff and other details like like that. So we're going to start with, I believe Stacey has our wins list. She's going to go through that. That wins list for reserves is going to be pushed out to y'all shortly in the next couple of days so that y'all can have that list on paper and be able to pass it around to your peers. So I'm going to hand it off to Stacey. Thank you.
Hi again, everyone. And I just want to reiterate things that have been touched on by the rest of the group. You know, this town hall is a little bit of a love letter to you guys. You know, you hear the phrase, oh, I paid my dues. I'm senior, I paid my dues. Well, what does that mean? I've paid my dues. Did we put in the time? We've put in the time. But it means something more than that. It means a level of hardship. And we put in those dues, but you're putting them in now. You're the ones dealing with that hardship. The pay, the schedule, the lack of a schedule, the uncertainty. You put up with that hardship now, you go through that now so that it's lessened for the rest of us. And we thought as a negotiating team, it was incumbent upon us to show the gratitude for you being in that situation and mitigate it, you know, wherever it's possible for us to do so. So this is a list of things that we were able to gain through this TA. And we're going to start with, it's not all in the reserve article. We're going to start with definitions, and airport standby is going to be defined as being in your base. You're not going to be called to airport standby or pulled off a trip off of, out of your base and assigned to airport standby anywhere. The red eye period, the red eye duty period, and the red eye segment, these definitions are either new or expanded. Together, those definitions increase the number of trips that are eligible for the night override, and they also increase your red eye restrictions in the scheduling, reschedule, and reserve articles. Now, if we move down to scheduling, you're going to see that an original pairing can't, domestically, an original pairing can't touch more than 5 calendar days. You're not going to be sent down on, some 5 or 6 day ridiculous pairing that you couldn't even plan for. Moving on to Article 12, reserve, you're going to see the 1800 reserve assignment hard deadline. Now, I know that's later than what the policy is, but the difference is policy versus rule. This is a hard stop, and it's going to be grievable. It's, they're accountable to it. And of course, we see later on, you have to check your email to make sure. That doesn't mean that it negates the hard stop. It just means there has to be a procedure, but we're still going to go after that if they are not meeting that deadline. You're going to have the AM, PM pref bid, the airport standby pref bid. The wrap start times, they can only start from 2 a.m. on. You're not going to have 1 a.m. wrap start times. Same thing, the last one ends at 6, I believe. Yes, 6. So you're not going to have 7 p.m. wrap times either. You're not going to be released to rest from your wrap and put on a later wrap during the day. No airport standby after a pairing unless it's a level 2, and never if your duty day was already over 8. Day of assignments, if the same FIFO and the same TAC lag, it's going to be by seniority. Let's see, what else? There's only going to be 2 airport standbys in a row, maximum of 6 a month, unless the reserve wants more. Currently, they can have you do 3 in a row, and they say it's 8 a month, but they also say they'll try to keep it to 8. Now we have a hard limit of 6 unless you choose otherwise because it suits you. They're not going to be able to assign you a trip to airport standby that's more than an hour after your airport standby ends without your concurrence. No airport standby for at-home reserves after 7 hours. So they're not going to be calling you when you have, when you've already been on reserve for 10, 11 hours and then say, oh, now you got to come in for airport standby. That's the thing of the past with this TA. No red eye flying if you were on a wrap that began before 1300. So if you are on any of those AM wraps, you cannot be assigned to any kind of red eye. Auto release on the last day of reserve after 6 hours, or 6 p.m. base local. I'm starting to lose, this list is so wonderful and long, I'm actually losing my voice. If a reserve is delayed to 03:59, so let's call it 4 a.m. base local on the last day of your reserve, you're going to get that a day off of your choosing, or you're going to get 412 above premium guarantee. So that's, you know, what some people call a golden day. We gained that for you. And if that day was the result of PTO, you're getting that PTO put back in your bank, which currently does not happen. You have to be released by 16:59 base local, the day prior to a vacation. So again, your vacation days, that VPTO is protected. Reserve balancing is back, except during critical coverage. That's, you know, that's where you can trade for a bad day to a worse day, essentially. And that's something we used to have, and it's back, and that is immensely helpful in giving you flexibility. You'll be able to drop down to a 2-day reserve block, which is currently a 3-day minimum. If a reserve works into, oh, we did the PTO day off, you get the PTO back. If you are in Mint, the JRA pay when you get worked onto a non-qualified roles position. And one more or two more additional things that are not in the reserve article specifically. The PTO, when you reach your 5th year, you're going to jump into an earlier bracket or a higher bracket a year earlier, I should say. So at your 5th year, you're going to be making 8 hours more paid time off than you would on the current JetBlue scale. And you're the most likely to be junior assigned, if we're being realistic. So the JRA compensation really applies to you. And that's an additional win here. Any JRA is going to be paid at a separate duty period. So even if they tack an additional assignment onto your flying outside of your pairing, even if it looks like it's part of the same pairing, it has to be paid as a new duty period. So the previous pairing can't have the rig eaten up, and you'll get a whole new duty rig for that junior assignment. So if it's worth less than 5 hours, you're still going to get the 5-hour duty rig. So those are some of the wins that we've got here for you. And, you know, we hope that you guys feel comfortable. And please, you know, enjoy the rest of this call. It's so informative. And we really just want you to feel comfortable as you move forward in your careers here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stacey. That was a cumulative list of our reserve wins that are NTA2, with the number 1 win being Newark will no longer be a co-base for June 2022. So beginning June 2022, the struggle will no longer be real as it relates to Newark, as it will no longer be a co-base. So that is my housekeeping note for that particular section. And I would like to give a thank you to the negotiating team and Lindy especially, who helped put together this list. And again, this list will be put in a form of a handout that will be gotten to you as the time period passes for this TA ratification period possibly. So we're going to move on to our article unpacking as I get up my reserve town hall agenda. So we're going to start in numerical order. We're going to start with Article 6 probationary period. Your Article 6 probationary period starts on page 19 in your hymnal. This is going to be unpacked by Sonya. This is a short article, so I'm going to pass that off to Sonya. And then after she does probationary period, she is also going to do Article 7 scheduling. Thank you, Sonya.
Just a housekeeping note, Taisha, were we going to go into the reserve article after first, or just because that's?
Yeah, that's Article 12, so I'm just going by article order. So if y'all want to do reserve first with Brendan running and then probationary, that's fine.
I'll do probationary, but I think reserve would be better because it's more chock full of what they need, and then I can go to scheduling if that just for flow. Okay, great. Perfect. All right, so hey, okay, so I'm going to talk about Article number 6, probationary period. So if you are a brand new baby blue, this is going to deal with you mostly because it's the first 6 months of your career here, or the beginning of your employment here. So the first 6 months is your probationary period. During that time, if you are on a continued progressive guidance or higher, it could be extended by another 6 months. And that's sometimes just how it is, you're getting to know a new job. If you're a commuter, there are a lot of growing pains, so that could happen. But for the bulk of IFCs who are starting their time here at JetBlue, it's going to be for 6 months. During this 6 months, the company does have the right to discharge or discipline any IFC with or without cause and without a hearing. So while we are, I can't think of the word, TWU is representing us, they can represent us for anything besides discipline or discharge. So I'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. So if you do run into an issue during your first 6 months here dealing with pay, wages, hours, conditions of service, we can be there on your behalf to help you file a grievance and bring that forward to an arbitration if necessary. So again, the union will be there for you for anything besides discipline and discharge. If you do have a meeting for discipline and discharge, you can still have your union rep available there to help you, guide you, coach you, advocate on your behalf, and assist you through that process. Currently, we only have a peer observer program, which is a peer who has been trained to able to coach you. They can sit in on your meeting, but they can't talk on your behalf. And this is something that we really gain a lot of strength with in this contract by having the grievance procedures, that someone can now advocate, and someone who is knowledgeable, who has seen a lot of issues here, they can really help you and guide you through this process to make sure that hopefully it comes out with a favorable outcome for you. So again, that is pretty short and sweet, the probationary period, 6 months. TWU is here for you throughout that entire time. And take it away, Brendan, for Article 12.
Thanks, Sonia. I appreciate that. And actually, Stacey did a pretty exhaustive job at covering this article already, and I appreciate that as well. So I'll just focus on a few things to expand on a little bit further. One of the things that we did get in this article that I think is worth highlighting more thoroughly is the additional components of the pref bidding as part of the next day reserve assignment process. And one of the main concerns that we've always heard from our reserve crew members, from the feedback that we've received over the years, is the difficulty with planning your life, but also getting the rest that you need to be able to do your job in a safe and effective way. And so we believe that as part of this TA, winning the ability for our reserves to preference bid either an AM RAP assignment, reserve availability period, home reserve period, or a PM reserve availability period as part of that next day reserve assignment process is a huge win for us, one that we feel will just positively affect the quality of life of our reserves. So as Stacey mentioned, those reserve availability periods, the AM reserve availability periods will begin at 0200 to 0700. The PM reserve availability begins at 1300 to 1800. And so if you are a morning person and you prefer morning flying, or your circadian rhythms are in that pattern, you will be able to preference bid for an AM reserve availability period. And the same goes for those who prefer working in the evening, afternoon, evening, as well as red eyes. Also, as part of that next day reserve assignment process, preferential bid, you can preference for airport standby assignments. And airport standby is not for everybody, but given different circumstances, some may choose or some may want to preference airport standby. You may be more likely to receive an assignment if you're at the airport already. That the airport standbys obviously have compensation that are associated with them. So we felt that there may be some in-flight crew members who wish to bid for airport standby, and we were able to get that in there as well. One thing I'll point out with the airport standby preferential bid is that you'll also see in the reserve article that we've limited now the maximum number of airport standby assignments that that a reserve can be assigned to, a maximum of 6 per month, and no more than 2 in a row. And that's also a big win for us. You'll see under current company policy, it's 3 in a row and 8 maximum. However, that's, again, as we see throughout company policy, crew services will make their best effort to do that. And once we have our contract in place, best efforts are moot. No longer is it associated with the best efforts or what that crew services person feels they wish to do that day to you as a reserve. The contract, everything in the contract is enforceable and must be adhered to by the company as a legally binding document. So it's always good to remind ourselves of that. We understand that things aren't that way now, and it's constantly changing, and interpretation of company policy is one way one day and one day the next, depending on who you talk to. And that's just unfair, unjust, not the way we can work effectively. And that's one of the main benefits of having a contract in place. One of the things that I also wanted to mention, and I think Stacey touched on it, if I remember correctly, but a reserve who had started his or their wrap may not be assigned to rest and placed on a later wrap the same day. This was something that we really wanted to focus on in the TA2. There was an issue in the first TA with this company policy, and we wanted to make sure that we address this to protect our reserves so they won't be subjected to this. This was certainly something that we are happy we were able to address. What else is there? I think those are the few things that I wanted to highlight more than on Stacey's list, but also I just want to focus on the fact that living under a contract and having a union at your back when it comes to dealing with the company and our relationship as in-flight crew members and employees to management is just night and day compared to what we're living under now. And unless you've had the benefit and have been lucky enough to work at a job where you have had union representation already, you may not be familiar with all of the benefits and everything that comes with a union contract. And so we're focusing on the reserve article and specific aspects that affect reserves specifically, but just having the entire contract and all of the protections that are in this contract that affect all in-flight crew members is something that is just invaluable to all of us, but also especially our reserve crew members. And I just want to reiterate that. So thanks, Sonya, and I guess I'll throw it back to you.
Just wanted to touch base on one thing about those wraps that I did get a little bit of feedback, a couple of questions about. So when you are pref bidding for the AM or PM, you can receive assignment anywhere between 0200 and 0700, but you cannot specifically request a time frame. So you're only requesting an AM. So you'd like to start 0200, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or you want to start in the afternoon with a start time between 1 p.m. and 6. But again, you can't specifically request a time. It's just the block of time. So just wanted to clarify that.
Sorry, Sonya, that's a really good clarification. I'm glad you highlighted that. That's really, that's a good clarification. I just, before we go on, I remembered the other item that I wanted to highlight that I forgot to, and I think Stacey mentioned this in her list, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that we did codify the current policy on picking up for reserves on their days off. Codified that ability to pick up to 20 hours on your days off and be paid up on guarantee. So I just wanted to make sure. Thanks, Sonia.
All right, great, wonderful. So I'm going to now take us back to Article 7, scheduling. So this is basically going to be a lot of what goes on in the day in regards to the length of your duty day as well as rest. So there's a lot of areas to touch on here. So I'm just kind of move through the ones that are probably most important. So firstly, the duty limitation of the day. Once your pairing that you've been assigned has completed, there is a 15-minute debrief window at the tail end of that. So you'll see if your day is supposed to end at 12:10, there's always an additional 15 minutes blocked onto that. And that's just for the blue turn and exiting the aircraft. So you'll always see block plus 15, and that's something you'll get very accustomed to once you start flying and are assigned multiple trips. One of our largest wins here was the reduction of the total duty day. So for the bulk of our time here at JetBlue, it's always been a 14-hour duty day, meaning that pairings and flying could be scheduled up to 13 hours and 59 minutes. And having such long duty days sets you up for a lot of extended days, especially if there's any sort of weather delays or an aircraft maintenance issue. So we were able to reduce the total duty day to 13 hours. So pairings have to be built to basically 12 hours and 59 minutes for the day. However, there is a carve out, which was very important for those that like longer days, and you may receive a lot of these longer day turns when you're on reserve, which those don't fall into that parameter. So if it's a 2-leg day turn over 9 hours, that can still be scheduled up to 14 hours. So you're going to see a variety of trips that you're assigned, and you may receive one of those and just understand that those are still okay up to 14 hours. The next part we're going to talk about is the extended day. And unfortunately, when you're first starting out, you do get some of the pairings that are a little bit longer in length per day. So you may run into this. So if you are scheduled for a duty day that is 8 hours or less, so this would be something tiny, like maybe a little turn to Washington, D.C. or LaGuardia, depending on what your base is. These 8 hour or less days, the day can be extended to 14 hours. We now have a pay component of that. We'll talk about that later on, but that was a big win also. If your duty period was scheduled between 8 hours and 1 minute to 12 hours, you can now be extended to a 16-hour day. And anything over 12 hours and 1 minute to 14 hours can be extended to 18 hours. We did get a little bit more control here just by at least getting a pay component to it. And also that the fact that you now can elect to remain on duty if you know that your day is going to exceed over 16 hours. Before it was kind of hoping that crew services would or calling them, but now you have the right to request to be removed at that point. Let's see, that is a very big issue, but I'd like to just touch on some other issues also while we've got your attention. So the layover rest requirements, an IFC must receive a minimum of 10 hours rest on layovers from release to report following a duty period. It used to be able to be reduced below that. So that's also a big win that we're codifying the fact that we get 10 hours rest, which may sound short, but it's actually, it used to be able to reduce to 8 or 9 hours on a layover, which really is a tight rest period. Pairings will be built with a minimum of 11 hours rest on a layover. And then during day of operations, if there's a modification, again, those pairings that did have longer rest could be reduced to 10 hours. If you're in base, so this is after you've completed a trip, but before the start of your next trip, you would get a minimum of 12 hours rest. So all reserves will get a minimum of 12 hours of in-base rest. If you would like to be reduced to 11, you can concur to that. So if you are eager to work a little bit more, you can request a shorter rest period. Let's see, I'm just trying to quickly go through the ones that pertain to reserves. Okay, pardon me, sorry. Just kind of got this. So one that's very important as well is because when you're first starting out, you do get some of the pairings that are a little bit less desirable. And I hate to kind of sugarcoat that, but it is true. We do have a lot of legs flying, especially on the E190 that is more shuttle type flying, where you'll see multiple legs in a day. So we were able to codify that pairings will not be constructed with more than 4 segments, and the segments are inclusive of limo transportation, deadhead segments, and flight segments. The company did want to move that up to 5, and we fought very hard for that because 4 legs is already a lot in a day. So we were really happy with that. And the initial pairing construction will only have 1, 2, 3, and 4 day pairings. So even though you may have a reserve block that's larger than that, you won't see any 6 day pairings, 5 day pairings. You'll only get pairings between 1 and 4 days. Okay. And honestly, that's probably the bulk of the scheduling article that's really going to pertain to your everyday operations. There's a lot of information there about limo times and things of that nature, which you may run into, but it's something that, I think you'll grow to understand, but it's not something that I feel is very important for you to really understand now as you're getting your foot in the door of working for this airline. So thanks for your time, and I'll pass it back to Taisha.
Thank you, everyone. That was Sonya. Sonya was unpacking scheduling Article 7. I've also placed the supplementals for that. And as a housekeeping note, I have opened up the chat for anyone who would like to ask a question related to reserve or being a baby blue. So that chat is open for you to type, and we hope to get you a response during this town hall. If we can't get you a response to this town hall, it's because we require additional research to gather and give you a more complete answer, which means that question will probably be rolled over into our last town hall, which is going to be on the 5th, I believe, at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At this time, I am going to move on to our last article that we are unpacking for this session. Is going to be bidding. This bidding is Article 9. This is going to be unpacked by Stacey, our JFK rep, and we'll also be providing you some additional links for that article as well. Take it away, Stacey.
Hi, everybody, again. So basically, I think I'm just going to go a little bit through the win list. Again, this is stuff you're gonna, as Sonya says, kind of get used to. For starters, the awards are going to be published within 48 hours, and that's going to set your timelines for your other windows. And that means you're going to be able to set an alarm and count on when, the pickup window will open and things like that. It's not going to be sitting by the computer hoping and wondering, or oops, I forgot and it closed already. You'll be able to set reminders on your phone and know when things are going to happen. We're going to have a scheduling committee and bidding committees, and they're going to have actual teeth to those committees. It's not just going to be, there to assist us with our bidding or scheduling questions, but they'll actually be able to make real recommendations and have those taken by the company and have eyes on what's going on with the construction of reserve requirements and, what the pairings look like. Excuse me. We're going to have the contractual language regarding the target window, and that kind of sets the numbers for the minimum, the target, and the maximum, where you have a threshold. So right off the bat, that establishes that our max window can never begin lower than 85. You're going to have the 12 days off guaranteed when your reserve line is being built. You're going to have a guaranteed 12 hours of rest when you're being scheduled that cannot be reduced without your concurrence. So these are, just some nice things here that kind of give you a little bit of extra comfort as you go through your schedule. You're not going to be getting that 10 hours rest and any of that, or oh, I didn't get enough days off. It gives you just a little bit more life and, quality of life. Also, you're going to still be able to stack your days if you choose to do so. And that's done by increasing your max days on, or in conjunction with reducing your guaranteed days off. And you're going to be guaranteed 2 days off between your blocks, unless you waive that down to 1. And that's, just a few of the things that are in there. Again, a lot of it is, it's just the nitty gritty stuff, but I think those are really kind of the biggest wins that are specific to reserves. There is the guaranteed days off, the guaranteed rest, and knowing when your windows are going to open is really the biggest items there.
All right. Thank you, Stacey. That concludes our article unpacking for today. I am being told we will get you the correct time as it relates to our last town hall on the 5th. I believe it may be at 10 a.m., not 1 p.m. And basically, we're going to read this question really quick. The answer to this question, by the way, can be found on page 71. Seidel's phone. My question is, how are we gonna guarantee that Newark doesn't become just a senior base? There needs to be some balancing of both senior and reserve baby blues in order for this to work. I know a lot of seniors want to transfer, and this will make it very difficult for a baby blue to gain any seniority in Newark. So this is found in page 71, bullet 5A. All voluntary transfers will be awarded in seniority order from the system bid choices on file at the time of closing. Basically, for those who are new to the airline industry, and then I'll pass this question onward to the NT. But as a housekeeping note, for those who are new to the airline senior culture, a lot of new introductions to any in-flight work group is going to be based on seniority. This is to honor and respect those who have served their time in the work group as it relates to additional openings. And this base openings is one of those that is by seniority order, just like bidding is by seniority order. And other additional things like PTO, VPTO is also kind of seniority. The longer you're there, the more reward you get. So just want to give that as a housekeeping note that by culture itself, system-wide, this is across the industry, a lot of what we have in our in-flight culture is by seniority order. So I'm going to pass this question off to the negotiating team, whoever wants to answer that.
Yeah. Taisha, if I could, and Stacey, I'll let you chime in. This is something that as somebody from the most senior base in the system, certainly I understand we have a lot of people that are on reserve out here for many years, and that's obviously something that is difficult at being at a senior base. When it comes to Newark, though, the focus is on the abuse and the financial hardship and the unsafe circumstances in many instances that our reserve crew members were faced with in trying to get and still do trying to get to Newark as a co-base. That is what we needed to fix in this agreement. It was in the first TA that co-bases were prevented at Newark, and it's something that just was not something that could go on, because the level of abuse that's taking place for our reserve crew members was just completely unacceptable. And so we're really satisfied with the fact that we were able to gain that win back and prevent the company from ever making Newark a co-base ever again. And if they do choose, as Taisha explained, if they do choose to open Newark as a base at some point in the future, an in-flight base, then that will be the staffing of that base and the ability to bid to voluntarily transfer into that new base will be governed by our agreement. And that includes the ability for anyone to bid to join that new base. And if you qualify under the agreement, have your expenses paid for your move to that new base. So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate Taisha's explanation of why seniority governs these types of processes, and that's seniority is so important to us. But the fact that we eliminated Newark as a co-base going forward is just a tremendous win in this agreement, and something that we knew as a negotiating team had to be taken care of for our reserves, because the abuse that they were being and still are facing with the Newark co-base was just completely unacceptable to us. So thank you, Stacey. I think you may have wanted to chime in.
Well, I think the thing about Newark is that it's pretty new. And especially if you're new here, you haven't been here for the opening of a new base. So Newark has been this huge topic of conversation. And we have to remember that a year ago, this was not an issue. If the company needed you to work in Newark, a trip had to begin in JFK. They had to limo you. They had to pay for the transportation and for your time for that. But any other base that's ever opened has been bid for by seniority. And that's in, Article 13. It covers how any base, be it Newark, be it, if they want to open a Chicago base, any new base is going to operate in the same way. And it's just, Newark just seems like this huge thing because it's going on now, but it's not going to be out of the ordinary. And as Taisha said, this is how base staffing is done at every airline. It's always a system bid by seniority. So that's just how bases go.
I'd like to add just one very generic explanation that just might help here. So any base, again, let's take it away from Newark specifically. So if the company is going to open a new base, we'll follow how the base is bid for. A base could never be staffed completely with line holders, because if, let's say, the base needs 100 people to open, 100 line holders apply, some of those line holders will turn into reserves, because just based on the nature of how they have to staff the base, you always have to have a reserve pool that will be able to be available to cover those trips. So when you do a bid to a new base, any crew member would have to think about where they're going to fall in on that base. And if they know they're going to give up their line, so say they've been holding a lovely line in JFK, but they're thinking of moving to Newark, they can see, okay, well, if I move there now, I'm going to lose my line in JFK and I'm going to be on reserve. So to think that it would only be a very senior base, well, it could be very senior in regards to the line holders that transfer there, but you always have to have a reserve support there. So just wanted to kind of clarify that any base always has to have a reserve base. And you can see when they do the system bid monthly, they tell you exactly how many crew members they need per base. And you can see, okay, well, if they're only accepting a few, my chances of holding a line there are going to be slim. My chances of being reserved there are going to be great. And you can make your decision based on that. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sonya. Thanks for highlighting that. And also, I just saw Tom mentioned it too in the chat, but I was going to mention it as well. We did also win the ability for in-flight crew members to bid for in the system bid on a contingency basis, which means that you can place a bid that says, for example, I will transfer to that base, or I wish to transfer to that base if I know that I will be in the top 30% of seniority in that base, for example. And then that system bid will only be awarded if that contingency is met. And so if you're going to be transferring to a new base or an existing base, and you only want that transfer to be awarded if you can hold a certain seniority in that base, we now have that ability to do so. So that was just something I wanted to add on there.
All right, so that answers that question. There were a few other questions that were answered, and that those were answered by me and the chat. If we are out on medical short-term disability, can we vote, and are we entitled to the bonus? Does anyone want to answer that publicly?
Yeah, anyone on any leave whatsoever, you're absolutely eligible to vote, and you should vote. So just remember, the voting poll opens on the 6th. You have to be registered by the 8th. And if somebody could correct me, is it on the 8th by 1300 hours? And voting closes on the 13th. And you are eligible for the 1450 lump sum upon your return to work. So anyone on any leave is eligible to vote and should vote.
All right, and that concludes that. Does anyone have any other questions before we close out this specific town hall? If you are not a good typer and you would like to raise your hand, just ask your question verbally, that is also okay. We will give you some accessibility as it relates to the avenue of how you ask your question. So I'm gonna give it about 30 to 45 seconds. Brendan unmuted. Brendan, did you have something else to say?
Sorry, yeah, Taisha, I apologize. While we're waiting, and I hope that we do get some questions, but there was one other thing that I wanted to highlight in the reserve article that I skipped over.
Okay.
The article says that when it comes to crew services asking a reserve to report with a shorter call out time than the one specified in the agreement, and a reserve will never be required to make a call out shorter than the ones guaranteed in the agreement. But if she or he or they wish to do so, or they choose to do so, they will attempt to report with less than the call out time. And if they do so, they will be able to be reimbursed for short-term parking or a taxi service. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is because it again reinforces the fact that the rules in the agreement are binding. And so it's not like it is today. It really isn't. I know when in-flight crew members sometimes see similar language, or often the same language that's in our current book, they may think, well, it says the same thing. What's changing? Well, everything changes because it's enforceable. And we have no way of holding the company accountable to current company policy that they've written. As we know today, they often don't follow company policy or reinterpret company policy on a daily basis. And that all changes once we have a contract that's legally binding that we can enforce as a union and hold the company accountable to. So thanks for giving me an extra moment there.
And I actually want to piggyback, because Brendan brought up a really great point and reminded me of something that is really important for you as reserves new here to know. When you see the word concur in the TA, that means your permission is required. It doesn't mean that if you say no, you're going to get a refusal. It doesn't mean that if you say no, you're not going to get your pay protection. If the requirement is for your concurrence, that means it's voluntary for you. If you don't concur to a red eye when they shouldn't be assigning you a red eye, you cannot be assigned that red eye, and you're not going to face repercussions. You're not going to once you come out on the line and they say, well, do you concur to sit airport standby? And you say no because you're a line holder, you're not going to lose your pay protection for not concurring in that instance. So that's just a really, really important word to take note of. Concur means they are asking your permission, not the other way around.
Okay, so we are going to have a anonymous question answer first, and then we're going to pick up Jay's question. They have their hands raised. So there was an emailed question: will critical coverage be discussed in this meeting? Also, it seems as though the contract refers to the IBBS when talking about holidays and time off. So how is the IBBS and the contract going to be in effect as it relates to critical coverage and holidays?
So I want to address that because the language in the IBBS, the proclamation that the VP can just institute critical coverage at any time, that was actually written after our definition was written, and it's very similar. And I'm sure it's similar for a reason, because a lot of the same words, but they're not in the same order. And that changes the sentence structure, and that changes the meaning of the definition. So whereas theirs says the VP can decide to add critical coverage at any time due to unplanned absences or circumstances that leave the operation vulnerable, that's a standalone statement. Our contract definition says these are days that, as the result of pre-designated holiday periods or 24 hours at level 3, then the unplanned absences will leave the operation vulnerable. So it doesn't say that those absences can trigger the critical coverage days. That's kind of the reason why they want them, but what triggers them is only the pre-designated holidays or the 24 hours at level 3 or higher. So there's no reference to the IBBS there. And that's a hard stop. They can't change it. We have 2 times a year they can pre-designate those days, and they will be put out in the IBBS, so you'll be able to reference them, but they can't be changed on a whim. They can't be added or taken away. The only time they can add them throughout the year is if we hit that level 3 IROP or higher once it's 24 hours. And a word on the IROPs. So IROPs are not defined here. They are defined in the pilot contract. They have triggers that must be met. The only time they can classify an IROP for our department only, and they've never done an IROP just for in-flight. They've always been company-wide. The only way they could do one just for in-flight is to say that we have a crew shortage. So if we have a crew shortage, then they could say, oh, that's an in-flight problem. In-flight has an IROP. But it also says that IROPs are something that is out of the company's control. So that definition really matters right there, because while we don't have the triggers, it has to be something out of the company's control. So we would look at that and say, well, why is there a staffing shortage? Are we having a staffing shortage because we're really calling out more? Well, we want to see that data. And if we're calling out more, why is that? Is it because the grid is locked up red all the time? Well, why is the grid red all the time? Is the grid locked because there's overscheduling, understaffing, mismanagement? Then there's critical coverage, which shuts off reserve balancing and, quite frankly, disincentivizes people from picking up. So now you have crew that can't drop, they can't give anything away, and you wind up further locking up the grid, and that forces people into calling them. So that is something where we would take a grievance for that.
All right, thank you everyone who answered that question. And just again, as a housekeeping note, in short, if the TA is passed, critical coverage will only be effective according to the definition that is in the definitions article with critical coverage. Anything out of that anything that they do outside of that definition is grievable and is in violation of our contract. So we have Jay. Jay had raised their hand. I'm wondering if they have a verbalized question. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to ask that question. And if we don't have the ability to give you the complete answer, this question will be rolled over and answered in our next town hall. So I'm going to unmute you. And then after Jay asks their question, and if there is an answer that can be provided, we will end our meeting after that. So I have unmuted Jay if they would like to ask their question.
Oh, hello?
Yep.
Hello? Oh, all right. So just in response to like the critical coverage, like I was after reading it, like I was noticing like on the flex up on like page 49 of the new contract, it was just saying like the critical coverage periods is outlined in a blue book, supplements. Like the flex up will be also be available when the in-flight leadership deems necessary and when also being communicated via email. So my question then becomes kind of like in a backtrack, like if we're going off of the IBBS, and in the IBBS, it does have like that added thing that the VP put in, how would that affect like with it like is the like if we're referring back to the IBBS and from the new tentative contract, wouldn't like how would that like I just don't understand the protection period of the critical coverage then, if that makes sense.
Right,
Like
so the definition
I
was,
got you, Jay.
yeah, the definition would still come into play, just so you know. And basically, when this contract is ratified, that little line that the VP has in the IBBS is actually going to be grievable, because that line itself is in direct violation of the contract due to the definition of critical coverage period itself. But I am going to hand off that question back to Stacey so that she can also answer that question.
So yeah, so Taisha covered part of it by saying that portion has to go away. That can't exist anymore. Now, as far as the reference to the flex up opportunities, so it says flex up opportunities will be available during all level 3 IRAPs and critical coverage periods as outlined in the in-flight Blue Book supplement. That's not saying that they can put anything in the IBBS that violates our contract or contradicts it. Those dates, the dates around the holidays will be outlined there for us to reference. Additionally, that's just saying that when you want to find out more information about Flex Up, you're going to look at the company handbook for the more fleshed out version of what a Flex Up period is. It's not saying that now because there's a Flex Up, they can change what our contract says.
oh, okay.
All right.
Got
well,
me?
that answers that.
Yeah, that
question.
makes more sense.
Okay. Yeah, so basically any attempt of the company as it relates to critical coverage that violates the definition of critical coverage in our contract is in direct violation of our contract and will be grievable. And that includes any current language that is also in the IBBS. So it is now 11:04. I am going to give you back 1 minute of your time since we did start at 10:05. And we appreciate everyone who was showing up to this meeting. If you have any other questions, again, as it relates to reserve or anything in our TA2, please go to the b6.twu.org website and fill out your registration form as it relates to the town hall, and also check whether or not you're registered to vote. So we thank you all again for attending this morning, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. And we definitely thank the labor of our negotiating team for showing up for this additional town hall. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Bye, everyone. Bye, Baby Blues. We love you. Y'all are great.